Okay, so the next thing is, oh shoot, what are we doing here? Share the screen. Okay, so the next thing is that the reform thinkers. Have you guys worked on this one yet?
I
No.
don't think so.
Okay, so this is an assignment. It's due on Wednesday. I introduced it to the class, the in-person people last week, and then I gave them time in class to work on it. What you want to do is you're going to choose 10 of these people. You're going to choose 10 of these people and you're going to profile these 10 people. Okay, so you're going to do one of these, a slide like this for each of the 10 people. Okay, you could do more than 10 if you want extra credit. You could do all 20 if you want the extra credit. That's fine. But this is what we're looking for. Um, the point of this assignment, the point of this assignment is that all of these people are important enough, but none of them are so important that they're like guaranteed to be on the test. Okay, here's the deal. All of these people are part of like different reform movements and stuff that are going on in the country at the time. Okay, we have a lot of different movements. We have like the Second Great Awakening. We have abolitionist movement. We have like social reforms. We have economic reforms. We have all these different reform movements that are happening at the same time, and those reform movements are basically 100% guaranteed to be on the test, right? The movements are basically guaranteed. The people, the individual people, what they do is they kind of have this rotating cast of people that they use. And so you might be getting, William Lloyd Garrison on this test, and then next year you have Charles Grandison Finney on the next year. I can't really predict, right? What's really important here is the movements. Okay. So you'll give me a biography of who the person is, what the most important accomplishments that person did. What I really, really care about is these two: the intellectual and historical context and the major reform ideas. Okay. That context is where you're going to put him or her into whatever their movement is, right? So this is the birth of the women's rights movement and feminism. If you're going to give me a feminist, then you tell me that they're part of the women's rights movement. Like, what did they do to the women's rights movement? If they're part of the abolitionist movement, you put them in that context. That's what we're really, really looking forward to. Does that make sense to you guys?
Yep.
Okay. Are you with me on this? Okay. In class, they worked on it as in groups for about a half hour or so, working on it and stuff. So you guys, I'm going to leave that to you on your own. You do that on your own. Cool. All right. Let's go to here. Okay. If I remember correctly, I think that the last thing we covered was how the market revolution impacted women. Does that sound correct to you guys? Yes, that sounds correct. All right. Um, let's review this really quick. This is a really important part. The effect on women is a really, really important part. This is like one of the sections that they love putting on the test. They love putting this on the test because women's rights doesn't have a whole lot going on in this time period. And so this is like a really nicely defined time period where they can put it on the test nice and easily. Okay. All right. So let's start this off. Let's start it off with Alicia. What's going on with women? How does the marketplace start us off with what you think is the most important thing that the marketplace is doing to women's rights?
Um, well, I think in like factories with women working a lot, they're obviously not getting paid as much as men are for like similar jobs. And then they also have this like I don't know, the stigma that they have to stay in line with for like what a woman is and like what values she should have and what she should be doing at home. So I don't know.
Right. So let's think about the market revolution, right? The market revolution is changing people's personal lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the personal everyday life of Americans before the revolution, Shivani? What is work like for husbands and wives before the revolution, before the market?
They would both be like at home. They'd still have their distinct like roles, but they were both under the roof. So like the male would be outside, but not like outside of the house, like still in the house, but like he would do the outside stuff, and the female would be in the house, like cooking, I guess.
Right. So she's taking care of the kids while he's taking care of the livestock, for example, or something
Mhm.
along those lines, right? And when it's time to harvest, both she and he and the kids are all out harvesting, right? Because it's harvest time, everyone's harvesting, right? What does that do to the gender roles at that time period? Are women going to be more or less equal when men start leaving the house to work?
They're
Are
less
women going to be
equal.
more or less?
Well, when men start leaving the house, they become less equal.
Why is that?
People start viewing outside work and factory jobs as more important, more money winning because they're going out to earn a salary. So the household chores before were considered just as important because the men were also at home, just in the farm, and that's how they earned their living.
Right.
So when they started going to factories and started doing outside work, the women's role was reduced to like housework, which wasn't seen as an equal share.
Yeah, it's not seen as work, right? Like we start getting this perception, right, that a woman at home is not working, right? I'm sure you've heard that before, where like you'll hear people introduce themselves and the guy will be like, I'm an accountant, and she'll say, I don't work. Or she'll say, I stay home, right? Like there's this concept that like if she's staying home, she's not doing work, right? If any of you have ever stayed home with a baby, then you know that that is not a vacation. Like, I would much rather go to work than stay home with kids. Oh my God, that's the worst, right? If you've ever met kids, you'll know that that's the worst, right? Kids are the worst. So that's good. That's creating this idea of separate spheres, right? Eric, what are talk to me about these 4 values: piety, purity, submission, and domesticity.
So these 4 values were values that I think men, but generally society as a whole, believed that a woman should follow, or at least a true woman. And they created this idea where a true woman should be religious, pure, submissive, and domestic, stay inside the home.
Right. Of the 4, which is the most important?
Piety, because with that, all else will follow.
Right. So piety is important because, like Eric says, piety is the root of all the other ones. Okay, that's the first thing. Why else is piety important? Someone else. Alicia. Why else is piety important?
I don't know. I would say piety is important because it keeps, I don't know, it keeps a woman outside of like an education and outside of like, I don't know, you look like you're not following. I'm not following either. I don't know.
Okay, Shivani, what else makes piety so important?
I think it's because women were seen as like more holy because they could have babies. So like,
Right. Just like God created humans, so too do women create humans. Right?
yeah.
Okay. Okay. So women are more viewed as being more connected to God, right? Okay. And what else? There's one other very important aspect of this, which is kind of where Alicia was going, that it's going to keep women from getting educated in other things, but that's not the value. The value is not keep women dumb. That's not the value, right? What else is connected to that? Nika,
I can guess.
take a shot.
Does it have to do with the moral superiority?
That's where Shivani was going, right? What else? What can you finish the thought?
Just about all of that?
Well, okay. So the third one that you want to make sure you have it in your notes. Okay. So 1, piety is the root of all the other ones. 2, women are considered more closer to God. They're considered closer to God. They're considered more godly, right? 3, that piety is a value that women can express at home and rightfully should be teaching it to the children. That's this idea of the separate spheres. That the woman's sphere of influence is the home. So this entire philosophic movement is basically to convince women that they should be staying at home and that they should be happy about it. Right? So this is a statement where women's rights actually a modern feminist would look at this as a step backwards in women's rights. Okay? So it's not, the women's rights movement is not like an ongoing upward slope. It's like backwards. It's more like a jagged slope. Cool? Cool.
Cool.
All right. I would like you to, let's do the Monroe Doctrine. You guys have the document that I linked to on classroom page? I think I linked to it, didn't I? Yeah, right here. All right, do you guys have it up? Well, I have it up now, so here we are. All right, so let's read this as a group. Did any of you read it? Give me a thumbs up if you read it. Great, awesome. Cream of the crop, best students in the building. All right, so yeah, all right, so let's read this as a group now. We'll go ahead and start. Shivani, go ahead and start reading it here. Oh,
Sorry,
hey.
I'm just pulling it up real quick.
I'm sorry, we didn't tell you what it is. So in your notes, let's make the next number down in your notes, which I think is O, is that right?
Yeah.
The Monroe Doctrine. Monroe.
Should I start?
Wow.
Well, let's put it in the notes first and then make sure everyone's ready to go. Okay, so this comes from a speech that President Monroe gave to Congress in 1823, and he's going to change American politics moving forward. So what we need to do is, as we're reading this, we need to recognize, how does this change politics? What is the doctrine saying? What is the doctrine saying? How is it changing politics? What are the main concerns of the doctrine? Okay? All right, so go ahead and Shivani, go ahead and start at the proposal.
Okay. At the proposal of the Russian imperial government made through the minister of the emperor residing here, a full power and instructions have been transmitted to the minister of the United States at St. Petersburg to arrange by amicable negotiation the respective rights and interests of the two nations on the northwest coast of this continent. A similar proposal has been made by His Imperial Majesty to the government of Great Britain, which has likewise been acceded to. The government of the United States has been desirous by this friendly proceeding
Desirous.
of
It's desirous, like we desire it.
desirous. Okay, got it. Has been desirous by this friendly proceeding of manifesting the best understanding with his government.
Great value. You skipped a line.
Sorry. Okay. Of manifesting the great value which they have invariably attached to the friendship of the emperor and their solicitude to cultivate the best understanding with his government. In the discussions to which this interest has given rise, and in the arrangements by which they may terminate, the occasion has been judged proper for asserting, as a principle in which the rights and interests of the United States are involved, that the American continents, by the free and independent condition which they have assumed and maintain, are henceforth not to be considered as subjects for future colonization by any European powers.
Okay, what does that mean? What does Shivani just say to us? I'm particularly interested in this sentence.
That Europe will no longer colonize the Americas.
Good. The Monroe Doctrine, the first part of the Monroe Doctrine is Europeans are not allowed to colonize the Americas. That's our first big part on here. The Europeans are not allowed to colonize America. All right, so let's go. Anika, let's have you read down to here.
It was stated at the commencement of the last session that a great effort was then making in Spain and Portugal to improve the condition of the people of those countries, and that it appeared to be conducted with extraordinary moderation. It need scarcely be remarked that the results have been so far very different from what was then anticipated. Of events in that quarter of the globe with which we have so much intercourse and from which we derive our origin, we've always been anxious and interested spectators. The citizens of the United States cherish sentiments the most friendly in favor of the liberty and happiness of their fellow men on that side of the Atlantic. In the wars of the European powers, in matters relating to themselves, we have never taken any part, nor does it comport with our policy to do so. It is only when our rights are invaded or seriously menaced that we resent injuries or make preparations for our defense. With the movements in this hemisphere, we are of necessity more immediately connected, and by causes which must be obvious to all enlightened and impartial observers. The political system of the Allied powers is essentially different in this respect from that of America. This difference proceeds from that which exists in their respective governments, and to the defense of our own, which has been achieved by the loss of so much blood and treasure, and matured by the wisdom of their most enlightened citizens, and under which we have enjoyed unexampled felicity, this whole nation is devoted.
Okay. All right. What did Anika just say?
They kind of like recognized that their roots were European.
Okay. Our roots are European, but
We're American, and it talks about the involvement of America in European affairs,
Mhm.
in what cases you should involve yourself, and then in all other cases, don't involve yourself.
Okay. All right. Alicia, why don't you finish off this paragraph? Start with we owe it.
We wonder if the amicable relations existing between the United States and these powers to declare that we should consider any attempt on their part to extend their system to any portion of this hemisphere as dangerous to our peace and safety. With the existing colonies or dependencies of any European power, we have not interfered and shall not interfere. But with the governments who have declared their independence and maintain it, and whose independence we have, on great consideration and on just principles, acknowledged, we could not view any interposition for the purpose of oppressing them, or controlling in any other manner their destiny, by any European power in any other light than as the manifestation of an unfriendly disposition toward the United States. In the war between those new governments and Spain, we declared our neutrality at the time of their recognition, and to this we have adhered and shall continue to adhere, provided no change shall occur which, in the judgment of the competent authorities of this government, shall make a corresponding change on the part of the United States indispensable to their security.
Okay. So this part's pretty important here. It's pretty important. So what is it from especially this sentence? Okay, this sentence is probably the most important sentence that Alicia just read. What does it mean?
I think it means that the U.S. is staying out of European politics. They don't want to interfere with any dependencies of European power
That's not
or any like.
That's not true.
Okay.
That isn't true. That's not correct. Let's look at
Does
it.
it talk about how the colonies in Europe, it says that they haven't interfered and shouldn't, and then a but statement. So like if something were to
Right. So
happen.
let's start with the but here. Right.
So any of the, I don't know, this is just a guess, so it's probably wrong, but does it say that like if a colony of any European power declared their independence and maintained their independence, if there's some oppression or something happening, they would interfere?
What is the United States going to do for an independent country in Americas?
In the what?
In the Americas, when a new country becomes independent. Because look at this next sentence. In the war between these new governments and Spain, we declared our neutrality at the time of their recognition. Okay, one of the things that this speech is recognizing that we haven't mentioned yet is some historical context, okay? Monroe is giving this speech right as the countries of Latin America are starting to break away from Spain, right? Mexico just declared independence. Haiti declared its independence earlier. Mexico's declaring it now. Within about 20 years, Spain will go from a massive empire down to nothing. Spain is going to lose Mexico. It's going to lose Guatemala, Nicaragua, Panama, Canada, Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina, Peru, right? It's going to lose everything from Mexico all the way down to Chile. Spain will lose all of that in about 20 years. Okay? So now you have that context. What does the highlighted sentence mean?
So is the US comparing Britain's control and oppression of them to that of the European powers in the Latin American countries?
Kind of. Not explicitly, but yeah, kind of. There's definitely an implied comparison there.
So this is just a guess, but since it says unfriendly disposition toward the United States, does it mean like that they're going to take it personally if Spain is colonizing these Latin American countries?
Yeah. What did we say in the beginning? The Monroe Doctrine says, what about Europeans acting in America?
They can't colonize the Americas.
No Europeans in the Americas, right? That's our first opening statement. Okay. We agree, and this is the part that Alicia was latching onto in the beginning, the with existing colonies and dependencies, we have not interfered and we shall not interfere, right? We say we're not going to interfere with something you already have, but if they become independent on their own, what is America going to do?
Respect their independence, I guess.
Not just respect, we're going to respect their independence and do what?
Support them by trade, maybe? I don't know.
We're going to defend their independence.
Oh, nice.
This is a really important part of the Monroe Doctrine, okay? So the first thing you need on the Monroe Doctrine is no Europeans allowed in the New World, okay? Second thing is America won't interfere with European affairs. However, we will always support independent countries and we will militarily support independent countries in the United States, in the Americas. This means that once Mexico declares independence from Spain, the United States is saying, Spain, you cannot reinvade. If you reinvade, we'll fight you. When we say no Europeans, we mean no Europeans. All right, Eric, pick us up. Oh, shoot. Eric, pick us up over here, the late events.
The late events in Spain and Portugal show that Europe is still unsettled. Of this important fact, no stronger proof can be adduced than the Allied powers should have thought it proper, on any principle satisfactory to themselves, to have interposed by force in the internal concerns of Spain. To what extent such interposition may be carried, on the same principle, is a question in which all independent powers whose governments differ from theirs are interested, even those most remote. Wait, is that some, okay. Even those most remote, and surely none of them more so than the United States. Policy in regard to Europe, which was adopted at an early stage of the wars, which have so long agitated that quarter of the globe, nevertheless remains the same, which is not to interfere in the internal concerns of any of its powers, to consider the government de facto as the legitimate government for us, to cultivate friendly relations with it, and to preserve those relations by a frank, firm, and manly policy, meeting in all instances that the just claims of every power, submitting to injuries from none. But in regard to those continents, circumstances are eminently and conspicuously different.
Okay. This is basically reinforcing the fact that we are going to recognize independent countries and defend them, right? We have our manly policy. Nice. All right, Shivani, can you read the last paragraph for us?
Yeah. It is impossible that the Allied powers, is that what I'm starting?
Yeah,
starting there, right? Okay.
Yep.
Should extend their political system to any portion of either continent without endangering our peace and happiness. Nor can anyone believe that our southern brethren, if left to themselves, would adopt it of their own accord. It is equally impossible, therefore, that we should behold such interposition in any form with indifference. If we look to the comparative strength and resources of Spain and those new governments and their distance from each other, it must be obvious that she can never subdue them. It is still the true policy of the United States to leave the parties to themselves in hope that other powers will pursue the same course.
Okay. What is the United States going to do with Europe?
Stay
Leave
on
them alone.
Yep.
West
We're-
here.
We're out. We don't want anything to do with Europe, right? And we're specifically out for wars, right? This is us basically declaring neutrality in all European wars. We're friends with France, we're friends with England. If France and England want to kill each other, then that's fine, they can do that, but we're friends with both. Right? We're friends with Spain, we're friends with Portugal, and unless they reinvade their colonies, then we'll attack. Right? So this represents a really big change in American policy because the United States is setting out and we're declaring what we're going to do. Right? The policy is that the new world is for Americans. South Americans, Central Americans, North Americans, Americans. The new world is for Americans. The old world is for Europeans. We're not involved with the old world. We're not going to get involved in the affairs in Spain. We're not going to get involved in things that are going on in those countries. We're not going to stop them from taking over Africa. We're not going to get involved in those things. That's not our business, right? America is our business. Okay. All right. So this is, that's good for the Monroe Doctrine, right? So now interpret the picture for me. Okay. Okay, so who's this,
This is Joe. He's an American.
right? This is Uncle Sam, right? American. He's got a little USA on his US on his hat, on his shirt, right? Who are these people?
Kind of like caricatures of Latin Americans, maybe.
Right. So who's this person?
A Mexican?
Yep. That's Mexico, right?
Okay.
This is going to be the Caribbean, and this person is South America. Okay. So each person represents a country or a region, right? Now, who do we got over here? Who's this guy?
Is that England?
Yep. That's England. Okay. Who's this guy? The Matador,
Oh, Spain.
Spain. Who's this guy?
Portugal.
Now, here's Portugal over here. Here's Portugal. That's a Portuguese national hat, like anyone would. Europeans would all recognize that hat.
Well,
Right.
guys, France.
Who's this guy?
France.
This one's France. And who's this one?
Italy?
Germany.
Oh.
Right?
dang it.
That's a Germany hat, right? Germany doesn't quite exist yet. At this point, it's like Prussia and stuff, right? Okay, so what does that mean? So what is this then? The water.
Atlantic.
Yep, the Atlantic Ocean. Okay, so what does the cartoon mean?
It says no trespassing, America for the Americans. So it basically unites, it's uniting the Americans against an invasion from Europe.
Yeah, basically, we're going to defend the Americans, Mexico, South America, the Caribbean. We're going to defend the Americans against the Europeans. That's basically what it's saying, right? That's the Monroe Doctrine. Okay, the Monroe Doctrine is linked to our next one, P, big number P, manifest destiny. Okay, all right, manifest destiny Manifest destiny is the idea that it's America's divine right to control the entire continent from sea to shining sea. This is where we're going to get sea to shining sea as our phrase also. It's our divine right. It's an extension of what idea? What idea did we get in our very first chapter that keeps coming back?
God gave us America.
Right? What is that? What is that? What is that? There's a name, there's a specific name of that idea. American something.
Exceptionalism.
There we go. Yeah, Alicia got it. Okay, so in your notes, put here that it's an extension of American exceptionalism. I'm sorry, I cut you off, Alicia. What were you saying?
Nothing worded.
Okay. All right. So this is an extension of American exceptionalism, right? If we remember back to Winthrop, John Winthrop, City on the Hill, right? He says in there that God has given us the empty continent for us to build the city on the hill for the country to look up to, right? Well, this is us saying, this is our empty continent. Let's go walk across this empty continent. Okay, that the entire continent is ours. It's supposed to be ours, and we're going to take it. Right? So we have pioneers, we got stagecoaches, we got trains, right? And we got natives running away, right? Here's the Mississippi River back here. Here's the Rocky Mountains in front of us, right? So we're moving our way out west. This is going to be a real problem for 3 groups. So you can put problem with manifest destiny, 1, 2, 3. Who's our 3 groups that we think is going to be a real problem?
Obviously, the Native Americans.
Yeah, let's put them as number 1, right? The Native Americans, of course. Yeah, the Native Americans, of course, would like to remind us that that empty continent is not so empty, right? The Native Americans at this point have already signed over 100 treaties that give them the land to the west. America keeps signing treaties with these tribes, and we keep pushing them further and further west. And the tribes keep saying, hey, we signed this treaty, why don't you recognize us? Okay. I'm going to spoil something for you. America will never honor those treaties. We will continue to take the land from the natives all the way until today, basically. Okay. Native Americans look at the concept of manifest destiny not as this like glorious God-given right. They look at this as a slow rolling genocide across the continent, which, you know, it is, right? Like it's really hard to argue with that kind of it's really hard to argue with that description. This kind of looks a lot like a rolling genocide. All right, who's our next groups that are going to be upset about this? Natives, of course, are number 1. Who's the next groups?
Did Spain still control the far west?
For part of it, depending on what year we're talking about. Yeah, so group number 2 is going to be Spain/Mexico. Spain/Mexico. Because our manifest destiny is about to run over their land. So for the first while, we say Spain will respect your borders and Mexico will respect your borders, right? Because Mexico gains its independence, and Mexico, upon its independence, Mexico controls Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, California, Utah, and Colorado, right? So Mexico controls all of that stuff. And we say that we're going to respect Mexico's boundaries, but we respect it until we A, move into Texas, and B, find gold in California. And then we stop respecting that boundary pretty quickly. Yeah. Okay, so group number 1, natives. Group number 2, Mexico/Spain. Okay, who's group number 3 that's going to have a real problem?
Would it be Canada?
Canada? Nah. Canada believes in manifest destiny themselves.
Ah,
Yeah. They're running over their own Native Americans, Native Canadians. Yeah.
well,
The other group is slaves. Okay. Manifest destiny is going to create the central issue for America for decades to come, and that issue is slavery. It's the wolf that we're holding by the ear, right? We can't hold the wolf by the ear because he'll bite us, but we can't let him go because he's going to bite us too. So we're stuck. Either way, we're going to get bit. Okay. As we move our manifest destiny out to the west, the southern states are going to become obsessed with the idea of expanding slavery across the west as much as they can, because the southerners are going to be trying to preserve slavery as much as they possibly can, and more the northerners are going to be wanting to get rid of slavery. Right, so the northerners aren't all against slavery, not all of them, but the abolition movement is definitely growing steam. It's definitely getting more and more, and a lot of those northern states are going to become more and more obsessed with it. Okay,
okay.
that's going to be our central issues. Okay, I think we're good. I think we are where the class is now. All right, so the test for the unit is going to be next week. The test for the unit is going to be the next week. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording here.